So, do engineers actually need business schools? I'm Professor Dave Mastak. I'm an engineer turned into a business professor, and I want to talk about that today. Hopefully, this is going to help you out in terms of deciding what you want to do, and also it's going to help you out in terms of learning about the two of them. So, when you are in an engineering school, I had no idea, by the way, so don't feel bad. What I'm going to do is give you a brief overview of what the two things kind of do, and then give you my view of what education is. And it's completely different than what you probably think about education, and hopefully, it's going to be a little helpful for you. So, engineering teaches you a set of problem solving skills. So, it teaches you some mathematics, and it teaches you not to be afraid of the fact that you're going to experience problems along the way. I remember many times that my lab experiments would not work, and I got to figure out what to do with it. And it's very different than than the more theoretical side of what you actually get taught in terms of science and in terms of mathematics. A lot of that stuff is very, very theoretical, but in an engineering program, it's pretty practical. You actually get to do stuff. You do a little bit of math, you do a little bit of science, and then you actually go and do stuff and you figure out, oh, wait a minute, this is harder than it actually looks, and it doesn't work out the same way that you would think about as it's written on a piece of paper. So that's a really important skill set, and it's very helpful for just dealing with a lot of life stuff. And you'll be very successful if you actually just have an engineering degree. I strongly believe that. You'll be very, very successful. It's hard to actually get. Lots of people know that. But also it adds a lot of value in terms of your perspective of like, hey, you know what, when things are really tough, I can actually get up and do this and figure this stuff out. Now, on the business side, there's a lot of things, a lot of terminology that often gets thrown about, and you're kind of blind to it. So I'd encourage you just to pick up a newspaper in the business section and try to read all of those kind of things. And a lot of it seems very foreign to most people. It's not very exciting. It's kind of boring. And there's these little kind of topics that people talk about. Often people talk about mergers and acquisitions. That comes in the news a lot. All these kind of things. And you're like, what the heck is this? Right? So what business would actually teach you about is some of these terminologies, and not to be afraid of that stuff. It's not going to be terribly difficult in terms of doing these kind of things. But also it's going to give you some exposure to some of those ideas, but also how you might incorporate things where there's humans that are involved, right? That's a really, really important part. And you would cover some things like human psychology, sociology, some basic things like that, like how people actually do things, which is not covered that much if you just looked at a general engineering perspective. It is very, very tech heavy. Now, here is what I want you to think about. So both of them in of themselves are very lucrative. They do very well, but here's what I want you to think about. Education is not necessarily, and this is the really insight that hopefully you're going to take away from this. Education is not about building a competency in something. I strongly don't believe that. As I've done and learned all sorts of things. I've learned about sociology. I've learned about economics. I've learned about engineering. I've learned about business. All these kind of lots and lots of different areas that I've gone into, and each one of those things, I don't feel like I'm necessarily an expert, although I probably am in many of those different areas at this point. But what I want you to sort of view this as it's opening up possibilities for you to view the world, right? So you think about mathematics, right? Um, it's completely not practical. The mathematics education that you're actually going to get taught. Nobody is going to learn about trying to do triangle stuff, right? Like nobody is going to do angles on a given day, except for a very small subset of the population. But what it does do is it opens up the possibility for you to be able to pursue those things if you choose to actually want to do those things, or you're aware of those things when you're sitting down and thinking about the world, and you're thinking about, what should I do next? How do I view the world? What is the problem here? Oh, I remember this thing about angles, and I'm going to actually view the world in terms of angles. Right? So it opens up a lot more than you would ever imagine just by viewing the world in this sort of problem solving, opening possibilities perspective. And I think that's a much better way to view general education in any particular domain, any education. It's the possibility of opening up domains so that you could see things that other people cannot see. That is going to be very, very important for you. It has very little to building that skill set. And that's why um, I think about this sort of debate about practical versus theoretical education. It's all nonsense, by the way. Theoretical education is just as practical as the practical stuff. Um, but what it does do, it gets you to view the world in a different way and opens up all of these different possibilities that you would never think about and that you would never examine without that. So it's not that one or the other is going to sort of set you back, right? Like if you just have an engineering education, you're going to do extremely well. If you just have a business education, you're going to do extremely well. The two of them, maybe it's going to give you a little bit more of an edge from how the market actually perceives you and what you're going to do. But ultimately, it's the combination of those two things that are going to allow you to see the world in a different way, right? So instead of thinking about, if you're just an engineer or you're doing engineering stuff, you would view, hey, this is a technical problem. Uh-oh, if you are, on the business side, you would think, oh, this is just a mainly human thing. And I see both of those, I've sort of taught both of those, been both of those, and I feel like both of them are missing, right? It's really difficult to have a conversation to business folks and they don't understand the technical stuff, right? And they don't understand all these kind of things. I'm like, oh my God. But on the other side, it feels the same way. Like, hey, that there's a whole world that's open. And I want you to just be able to explore the world, have fun, look at it and say, hey, I can pursue these things. And, sometimes it's a technical problem, sometimes it's a human problem, sometimes it's an entire system problem, and we can fix those things. We can pursue those things and we can tackle those things. So, yeah, does a business, does business actually help you in terms of, in terms of adding to your engineering and how you view the world? Yeah, it does. Is it going to massively change you? No. Is it going to make you a whole bunch more money? No. What it's going to do is allow you to view the world in a different way. And hopefully you'll be able to solve more problems, be more excited about the world around you. All right. If you like this, give me a thumbs up. Do take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.